evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Tonight, I will be very slowly but surely making my way through this crochet project. It's a weeknight. There are crickets outside, which is a nice little ambiance. I have a candle that is... What is the scent of this? It's called Stressless. It's kind of like a beachy style. Just living my best life. Crocheting what I hope will one day be a blanket if I have the patience to make it through. This is, I think, my third night working on it. So, working on it piecemeal has got me this far, but it's still a very long ways off. But, I figured I'm doing it anyway, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do while I did it, because I am incapable of not multitasking. So, I'm not really going particularly slowly, because this is more about maximizing my crochet time than making a instructional style ASMR video. Oh, and the fun part is I'm living life on the edge, trying to do this without anybody opening my door and finding out. It's our secret. One day I might do an actual instructional video for crochet, like ASMR style. But I almost feel like that's been done to death. Or I guess more that crochet instructionals are pretty de facto relaxing unless you have somebody who puts one of those like really happy-go-lucky, free to use music bits on it, which is, those just get exciting and loud. I left the room for a moment to go let my dog out and use the restroom. Things that humans do. And I walked back in the room, and this candle I have going here, what is it again? Stressless. It smells very good. When you light a candle and then you don't leave the room in which you light it, you just kind of adapt to it, but then you leave the room and you go do something like maybe brush your teeth, or literally anything else. And you walk back in, it just kind of like hits you in the face. It's a big hit in the face of stress-free relaxation, which is pretty cool. For any of you crochet people out there, or wish you could crochet people out there, this blanket is just a very basic blanket. It is chain a multiple of 2, chain 1 more, and then turn around and do single crochet and then double crochet all the way back. And by that method you should end on a double crochet, and then chain 1, turn your project and do it back, and starting with a single crochet, and just keep doing that forever. I have a functional knowledge of how crochet works, and that's about it. There's so many fancy things you can do with it. I know like 4 stitches, and the concepts behind like 2 more, but like I don't really use them often enough to merit remembering them. So I just end up making a lot of the same kind of thing. I think last year I made a couple infinity scarves that were just alternations of a single and double crochet. I think it was chain, a line of single, a line of double, a line of single. Oh, I think the difference was that I think it was that between the two, there is a difference, I promise. Between the double and the single, I think you change how you go in. So like rather than going where you normally would for a stitch, it's like you go like between the actual, sorry, I hit the camera, you go between the actual double and single, if that makes sense. I don't know, I haven't made it in a while. I made them last year. It was the easiest pattern I could find with this, to do with this yarn. And this is actually me working with this yarn for the first time with the correct size needle, because, or hook, whatever, because I am not a very relaxed person when I do things, and so everything was turning out to be really tight, and so the only way that I could teach myself to make projects that were not super tight and difficult to work with was to use a hook that was larger than I needed. Oh my god, what did I just do? So that I could just, have some produce in my hand, and every now and then I would be able to relax enough. I don't know, it worked for me. I'm better about being too tightly wound while I'm doing these things. Now currently I'm sitting in a weird position for myself because I'm usually just doing this in my own lap. So doing this on like a surface where my arms have to rest is a little bit strange for me. I'm thinking of doing, this is a little bit difficult to explain, and pardon me stopping while I pull more yarn out of the ball. So I know crochet products have been pretty much, or crochet videos, I feel like, are pretty done to death by the people who do both ASMR and crochet, or to the people who just do crochet without those very loud background music bits thrown in. But one of the things I was thinking of doing was an ASMR video in which I explain how to conceptualize crochet in 3D space, because my biggest issue with it in the beginning was just understanding what I was looking at, because it's very hard. Like I feel like either you're good with knots in 3D space, or you just struggle intensely with even sort of understanding what you're looking at. And for me, I was like, okay, I know what you're telling me to do. I learned what the stitch is, but like I was having trouble checking my own work because I didn't know what I was looking at. And so, and I had a friend who recently expressed the same feelings about crochet, where she was like, I feel like I could really relax if I understood what I was looking at, but I don't. And, I keep picking it up and then getting mad and then putting it down for months. But like the basic premise, if any of you guys know crochet and can maybe help me word this better or something. But for me, the premise is that I lost my place in what I was doing. That's exactly what the premise was. That basically, see, I'm even having trouble wording it now. But basically, all of the main stitches that you need to know for a beginner level, which are the chain and the single and the double. All of your basic level stitches are a variation on the chain stitch. and the other ones also might be, but I don't know enough about them to speak on that. So I'm literally only talking about, oh no, did I mess up in the previous row? I think I did. Oh no. Oh god, excuse me for one moment while I panic. That doesn't make sense though, because I came out on the right number. Oh, screw this. I hate this. Okay. So I have, this is a double. See, the fact that I can even kind of backtrack to any extent, like I can't even tell you if I backtracked correctly, but I can backtrack and kind of know what I'm looking at least eventually. But yeah, so my concept is kind of explaining how a single piece of yarn becomes a project to people like me who are not as able to comprehend what they're looking at as they do it. Because, I mean, ultimately, think of if you do a chain stitch and then when you want to start the project, imagine that you do a chain stitch and then it says, chain this many and then chain one more and then turn, single crochet into the second stitch from the hook. And oh my god, I'm losing my mind. Oh my god, I'm in the same exact spot, aren't I? It says single crochet into the second chain from, second link, whatever, from the hook, and you do. And so what that is that you're just it's literally just that you put the needle through the project. I keep saying needle when I mean hook, but you put the needle through the project and pull the yarn through, and that action by itself is just hooking it to the project. And so that attachment, you treat the original yarn on the hook and the attachment yarn as one unit. And so that's why you hook it through the project and then you pull it back through. And for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'm really sorry, but basically, a regular chain stitch would just be grabbing this yarn and pulling it through. But the first thing that you want to do when you're talking about making a project is just real quick hook that to the project, and then the attachment to the project and the actual yarn that's normally on the hook, treat that as one unit. And that's why after you hook it to the project, you pull it through. You pull it through both. And I feel like if someone had explained that to me a few times in practice and maybe drew it out in some way, not that I know how it would be easy to draw that in any particular fashion, it's just such a 3D concept that is very difficult for some people to learn through YouTube. But so let me see, where am I at? I'm at a single crochet. So, look up a chain stitch. I can't really do one without having to backtrack a lot, but the chain stitch is just loop over and pull it through, loop over, pull it through, yarn over, pull it through. And a single crochet is just, hey, real quick, let me just sneak in here real quick, and this piece is just attaching what you're about to do to the rest of the project. And so these two yarns are now functionally one unit. And so you're like, okay, yarn over, pull through the unit. Now, double crochet is the same concept, but you're also, so when you're doing the single crochet across, or the chain across the top, which is, if you look at this, that would be what your chain looks like on its own on the top, and that's why it's just a single crochet that is attached to the project here. So a double crochet will still have this at the top, but it will also have one of these between them. So whereas this piece here if I can get the thing to focus. This right here, the attachment to the project, is also, ultimately looks like a chain stitch. So you have the main chain on top, but a single chain in between this chain and this chain, like this row and this row. So if every row in this blanket specifically is a chain, you have a chain, and each one is connected by a single link. Almost imagine like an actual, I don't want to say chain mail project, because I don't know what an actual chain mail project would look like, but basically imagine a necklace, and you have a second necklace, and you just have one loop between each one of those loops holding them all together. So a double crochet, which is, I will show you, you loop over this here, so you loop over here, and what this does is, in this scenario, what you want to think of it as, is the loops that are on the hook before you go through the project are going to determine how many chains you have in between this row and this row. So if you wanted to have 2 loops or chains or whatever in between, you would loop over. You could do it twice if you wanted, though I don't know what that's called, but let's just do it. So you have the main yarn and you loop over once, and this means that we're going to have 2 chains between it, and let me show you how it happens. You loop over once, you pull through the project, this is your attachment. Now these 2 are your 2 chains, but these 2 together right now, this the first loop over before you attach to the project and the attach to the project, these 2 are now a unit. So if you treat these as a unit, you yarn over, now that it's attached to the project, you yarn over like you would with a single, and you pull through the unit, but not the last one, because you didn't make a unit with that one. And so now this piece that you just pulled over, and my camera's really bad at focusing, so I promise I'll do like a real video like this. But this piece right here is, oh my god, my camera won't focus. I'm so sorry. I haven't really been looking at my camera this whole time. Anyway, so the piece that you just put on the hook because you did this first little doodad here, this piece is now part of your unit, like you would have for the single crochet. And so you still have to yarn over to pull this one through. And so at the top of this whole thing, you have the chain again. Oh my god, I'm losing my mind that this won't focus. And so you still have the chain up here, and I'm going to keep hitting my camera stand here. But now between these units is a 1, 2 chain here. And so the ultimate result of this blanket is going to be just like puffy, I think is the right word to use. And so and the whole method of doing this blanket is just alternate single and double. And the way that I know which one I'm on is because the part that you put them in feels different once you get it all set up. So like next one is single because I barely have any room in this little piece, so I know it's going to be single because I can't fit a double in there, or not without trying. And then the double, I have enough room for my finger, so yarn over, which is a unit, attach it to the project. These 2 are now its own unit. Pull it through that unit. These 2 are now its own unit. Pull it through that unit. Single crochet. Go in. This is now a unit. Pull it through. Double crochet. Yarn over. You have, this is now going to be your 2 chains. Attach it to the project. This is now your unit up here. This one chills out for a bit. Yarn over, pull through the first unit, yarn over, pull through the second unit. Now, I don't know if this is going to help anybody, but I feel like this would have been a key piece to getting me into crocheting a lot earlier, just understanding what the function of the specific things that I was doing will do. And so, where am I at now? That was a single question mark. think so. Alright, so we got a yarn over to make these two. These are going to be 2 chains. Yarn over, attach to the project, pull through the first unit, which is 2, pull through the second unit. And so the function of these is to remind me that I messed up my project in the last line, but it's okay. It's a home project. I'm not selling it for anything. It's mostly practice with a function I'll use at the end. So your single crochet is going to give you, if you did an entire project that was a chain, a single crochet, all the way to the end, you would just end up with basically a flat project. There would be very little space in between your your rows or your specific stitches, and it doesn't really have any kind of design other than the fact that I have a yarn that changes colors. It doesn't really have design. Your double crochet, if you did an entire project that was just double crochets, it would be much faster because you're making you're making a lot more with one particular movement. And so, for each row, you now have 2 chains in between each row rather than 1. Or links, if you want to think of it in the way of a necklace being linked together. I'm having a nightmare. I can't figure out what I just did. It was single. And so your chain that is the basis of crochet is basically what you're going to do for the most part anytime you need to transition between something. It's just your little I need a little bit of space to move, which is why when you finish a line in a project, you'll usually chain. So if you finish a line in a project and the whole project is flat at the top and then you turn it, the first chain would bring the project, the next line of what you're doing. So the first chain, you turn your project around, chain 1 brings you up to this row to work on. Now, if your first thing is going to be a double, which as we discussed is going to be 2 chains in between each row, then you would have to chain 2 and then double crochet, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of blathering at this point, but it's just something that I've been thinking a lot about how to make a video for it. And of course at this point I'm probably talking much louder than an ASMR video merits, but that's how it be. But honestly, I would love to get more into crochet, but a lot of my mental hang up with it is well, I could be doing something else. The amount of time that it takes to invest in it, I could be doing something else. I could be writing an essay. I could be, filming something. I could be, making other content for other channels that I have, or reading a good book, or doing some chores, or whatever it is. And then, my hang up is that I just keep thinking that thought process with every single thing that I want to do in my life until I sit there and do absolutely nothing. So, it's anxiety for you. I'm doing so much of this off camera now. I'm going to get to the end of this row and then call it a night. I have no indication of how much memory I have left on my phone to finish this video. And I forget if I said it in this iteration of my recording, but I'm on my phone. I've got a lavalier, nothing fancy. I just feel like I've been leaving you guys hanging just because I haven't had methods by which to make the fancy videos that I have in mind. So I have an SD card that's loaded up with individual recordings of random props and a computer that doesn't work because it is at this point, I think, 9 years old, and it's a laptop that got taken apart for a reason, and then all the screws were lost, and it's kind of just not really a good functioning device anymore. But if that crochet video is something that would interest you guys, or even, actually, let me put it this way, because I'm probably going to make that crochet video regardless, but what I will ask you is, if anything of what I said in my explanation of crochet even sort of maybe made sense to you in a way that you weren't aware of before or something, like any piece of it that you think I could expound on, let me know, because I really want to flesh this out for people like me who just can't, like, I can't even tell you how long it took me to understand what I was looking at. Like, I picked up crochet like 2 years ago, and it wasn't until like kind of recently that I was like, oh, that's what that means. Like, that's why I would chain 1 or chain 2 or chain 3 on this project. Like for that scarf that I was making, that was a 2 rows of single and 1 row of double. For the 2 rows of single, when you got to the end and your next row was going to be a single crochet row, you would chain 1 and continue, but on the double crochet row you would chain 2. And so, apologies for any noise. There are people outside of my room making some noise, but and suddenly it just kind of made so much sense, because with enough time, I'm sorry, I'm pulling yarn out of the yarn ball at this point. Anytime that I would mess up and not chain not realize I was on that row and I had to go back, I would sit there and I would see why it didn't work, and it suddenly made the beginning of that row of the project just look ill-fitted and like just tight, and you saw the line kind of not work for the edge of the project anymore. And if you do that enough times, it just looks kind of stupid. So I think my biggest gripe with crochet is I buy my yarn at the store, and almost always only when there's a sale. And so by the time I get to Joann Fabric or Michael's, the yarn stacks have just been destroyed. Like, there are so many times where I just come up to the cash register and I'm like, look, I tried my hardest to find ones that had labels, but like, this is all you got. So by the time I get to the yarn, people have manhandled it, and the nicely set up system for getting the beginning of the yarn out, or to rephrase, the correct beginning of the yarn out, because sometimes I grab the wrong one and then nightmare ensues. It's just that me beginning a crochet project is just like 30 minutes of carefully trying to fish inside of a yarn ball to get some goddamn yarn. But like, once I get going, it's pretty good. I'll usually, if I want to watch a long video, I'll just kind of put that on and then put this, start doing one of these in the background. Though my absolute desire to multitask at all moments of the day, it murders me, because I'm like doing crochet and watching a video on my TV on YouTube, and then I'm like, oh, I should check Twitter, which is probably not the best use of my hands while I'm crocheting, if I had to think of methods for which I could use my hands. So I'm going to tell you now, I absolutely messed up the beginning of this line, but I am too far into this project to backtrack that much. So I'm just going to really quick double check that I didn't do anything wrong in this row. I think we have 2 singles here. Hold on. God, this is really just how my life is. It's like, oh, I'm doing a crochet project. Let me just real quick. Let me just undo the whole project. I think I did that once. That I messed up a project so badly, I just undid the entire thing and started over. I think it was... I want to say it was when I was doing an infinity scarf once, and it was one of my first ones, and I wasn't understanding the terminology for the project at the time, and it turned out to be because they missed like a very important step or something, and I don't know if it was because they made an assumption that I would know that was a very important step, but it turns out I didn't know that, and my project just suffered for it. What am I doing? This is a nightmare. The second hardest part to crochet, other than finding the yarn to start with, is that if you have a system going in which, like, you know where to put the next stitch, especially when you're a beginner and you're not in a position to just be kind of winging it, when you mess up, my first instinct, and probably somebody else's, is to panic. That, like, oh God, I messed up, there's no recovering from this. But let me tell you, until you're at the point where you're making very intricate things, like where part of the design of the finished product is the crochet itself, if that makes sense. Like, not just that, oh, I switched colors here and that's part, where part of the design is the crochet. It's really not going to be that bad of a thing to just kind of go, whoops, the previous row I did a double instead of a single. Okay, I'll just pretend it's the same stitch. Like, you can really just kind of fix it, quote unquote. Especially if it's like a private project, like it's for yourself or it's for a family friend who's not going to try to resell your work on Etsy as their own. It's really, I think my favorite thing about it is at least for me, for most people in my life, they don't care if it looks perfect. They're just happy to have a free scarf or whatever it is. I think I'm going to end up giving this maybe to my sister. I haven't decided. It's who I bought this color yarn for, but it's actually almost reminiscent of an old blanket we used to have. I hope you enjoyed this very long and possibly at parts not quite ASMR-y ramble. And let me know if there's, if any of that crochet explanation did anything for you. I'm going to, try to figure out a good way to explain it to people who are like me and can't visualize things very well. So, I hope you have a great night, and keep on being you. Pretty great as you are. Good night.